Okay. All right. So everybody, thanks for joining me today. Oops, one more person's coming in. Thanks for joining me today. This is, oh my goodness, week 3. So after the completion of this week, we will be halfway done with the semester. So today is Tuesday, which means that it is exam day. Exam 2 is up on Blackboard. I see that some of you have already started taking it or have completed it. Great job. The grades are good so far. So those that haven't taken it, good news on that front. This week, we have new chapters that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be starting to look at the individual groups of life beyond the unicellular bacteria and archaea that we did last week. Now we're going to be starting to look at a wide range of diversity of some of our unicellular and multicellular protist groups. And then we're also going to look at our plant groups this week too. So this week we'll be looking at chapters 28, 29, and 30. So the protists, and then the different groups of seedless land plants and seed plants. For this week, that means that there are only 3 chapters that you'll need to complete SmartBook assignments for. And those, once again, are going to be due next Monday evening. There are 2 participation kind of, after you watch the video lectures, participation quizzes. So the one for today, that's assigned to today, participation 5, that will be due on Wednesday evening at midnight. And the following one for Thursday will be due next Monday. So I'm gonna go ahead and just share my screen just to show you what is available on Blackboard today. And then I have some other information that I'm going to kind of review. Okay, so as you notice as we go, I kind of just make each of these folders smaller just so that it's easier to scroll down and just see what's relevant for this week. So week 3 Thursday, and these are the assignments and the topics that we have for this week. So the Connect assignments from last week were due yesterday, Monday at midnight. I have been sending out kind of Blackboard notices for individuals on Monday in the afternoon if you hadn't completed them, just as a kind of reminder that if you didn't complete them, that you want to make sure that they get done on time, and I'll try to continue to do that on Mondays as well. Let's see, I'm going to click in here so you can see. So exam 2 is open. Please make sure that you complete that by tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. There is 60 minutes. It auto submits after 60 minutes. Make sure that when you take the exam that you have steady internet connection, there isn't a storm in the area, and that you won't be disturbed so that there isn't anything that interrupts your exam. If there is an interruption, please, having evidence helps me kind of make sure that it was a legitimate excuse, and it helps me kind of figure out what the best approach is to help you. The 2 SmartBook assignments are already here, as are the different video lectures. For chapter 28, there are only 2 sections, 28.1 and 28.2. You will, if you're in lab, you will be looking at an entire diversity of protists in a lot more detail than what we're doing here in lecture. Here we're doing just an overview of the protists, and kind of I'm giving you a focus on endosymbiosis. I'm going to scroll down just for a second. I've included this video for endosymbiosis, which I included for the previous lecture as well, just as a help in case you found that challenging to kind of wrap your head around. For chapter 29, this is our introduction to plants. We're looking at a lot of different sections of plants. This is because we want to introduce you to the diversity of the plants and how they're connected and what makes a plant a plant. So there are lots of video lectures, and part of this is because I broke it up into components so that you're not listening to just an enormously long video. So there are multiple videos for you to watch. And then your participation assignment is here. But also, if you keep scrolling down, you'll notice that I include a lot of additional videos. Some of these are videos that I included in the lectures. So for example, I did include these different videos of moving protists because I am a plankton ecologist. So I'm a marine scientist. I study plankton. I love plankton. I love little small organisms that move, and I love microscopes. And so I find the movement of small organisms fascinating. And so I like to just give you these kind of videos. You aren't going to get to see them directly in lab. So, and actually, even if we were in lab, these are done by microscope experts. So you get to see it at a level of clarity that you probably wouldn't get to see on your own. For the plants, I have a couple of videos on the life cycle of the different organisms. So I have a life cycle of the moss and I have a life cycle of the fern. There are different levels of quality. They kind of approach them in different ways, but one of the learning objectives that we have for you is for you to understand the life cycle of the plants. It's very different than in your animals. And so the videos I find to be really helpful for you to connect what the organisms look like at different stages in their life cycle. So I included that. And there is actually 2 different videos for the kind of moss life cycle. When I write alternation of generations and bryophytes, that's actually a moss life cycle as well, because the life cycle of your mosses is referred to as alternation of generations. The difference in these 2 is how it's presented. So this one down here just shows you what those actual structures look like under the microscope. This other one is kind of more of an animated version. So I just wanted to highlight that those were there for you as well. One other thing that I did want to mention this week, and you have plenty of time to do this, is just so that it doesn't sneak up on you, is that you do have this brochure deadline that is approaching. So you either you're required to either complete a brochure or a video for this semester on a topic of your choice, but that connects, an organism and either how they impact humans or how humans impact them. And I want you to connect them on 3 different levels of biological organization. So something like that organism, the population, or how it affects an organ system, something along those lines. So just as a reminder, the deadline for that, oh gosh, I didn't update this. The deadline for this, if you click in it, is correct. Is Friday, August 7th. So I know that seems far away, but we are actually approaching the end of July. I'm going to correct this right now because this is the second time that I've noticed this, that I haven't done this for you guys, and I don't want to pull it up again and be embarrassed. Friday, August 7th. All right, so now it is correct. Okay, so if you haven't started thinking about it, please do. I would actually like to kind of touch base with each of you. I'll create kind of like a survey in Blackboard for you guys to kind of inform me about what your topic, so that I have an idea of whether you're on the right track. What I noticed from summer session 1 is that not everybody really understood what I was talking about with these 3 levels of biological organization. I don't want you to lose points for something that with a little guidance you'll be able to do correctly. So that's partly why I'm going to add that component in. And just so you have this as an awareness, there are examples of brochures and a video information down here. If you haven't been using them, please remember that review sheets are available on Blackboard for each of the chapters. And then one additional thing that I have added for you this week is that this week's topic involves a life cycle, which is new for us to be introduced. You will also learn about it in lab as well. It's called alternation of generations, and I go into it in some detail in our video lectures. But you will be asked questions about alternation of generations on an exam. I do want you to understand it. So in the olden days, when I had to learn alternation of generations, what I remember doing, because I struggled with it, it didn't make a lot of intuitive sense to me that organisms could have in their population, they had both multicellular haploid stages and multicellular diploid stages. That just was so strange to me that there were reproductive organisms that had either half the number of chromosomes or, you know, a full set. Like, it just was confusing to me. So I redrew these life cycles over and over and over again. I do recommend that as well. But I've also included these two practice documents. One is a Word document and one is a PowerPoint, but they basically just have blank figures. So figures of the different kind of stages in the life cycle, and they're blank. And I recommend you opening them up and filling them out on your own. One of them actually has like a matching with it as well, but these are tools for you, because when you get your exam, I could use any figure, and oftentimes it's one that, it might not even look like this, but it'll just be like circles or squares or something, and I will ask you to label based on which part of the diagram is haploid or diploid, and what is being produced, which is the gametophyte, which is the sporophyte, where are the spores, where are the gametes. And so the more familiar you are doing this, either by drawing it or looking at these practice diagrams, the better off, the faster you'll be at answering those questions on an exam. And this, I do know, is a challenging topic, so I wanted to give you extra practice with it. So those are some basic things that I wanted to review with you. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing that now. I did want to, as I've done with other chapters, I wanted to go over some kind of misconceptions or highlights about the information, just to make sure that it was a little, just to highlight it so that it's clear for you as we move forward. So the first chapter I'm going to give you some highlights on are the protists. Okay, with your protists, and I do go into this, they have different nutritional modes. Some of them are heterotrophic and they eat other organisms, but some of them are photosynthetic, so they can produce their own energy as well. And some can do both, and they can switch throughout their life cycle. It's really interesting. But a lot of times when people think of photosynthesis and you know, the vast majority of oxygen being produced and released into the atmosphere, people think only of your plants. But in reality, particularly in your oceans, algae and your protists produce an enormous amount of oxygen and contribute significantly to primary productivity. So they provide an enormous pool of food resources for higher trophic levels. And this is the other part of the biological oceanographer in me, that algae are hugely important, and these algae are protists. So it's really not just trees and flowers that are important for providing food for animals. Also, your algae is. It's hugely significant. The other component that I want to mention, and I kind of alluded to this with the bacteria and the archaea, just because some of these organisms are unicellular, just because some protists are unicellular, does not mean that they aren't complex. Single-celled organisms like Paramecium, that single cell may actually be far more complex than a single cell in a human body, which is kind of surprising, right? Because we think we're so advanced, but that single cell has to carry out everything that an organism has to carry out. All of the basic functions are carried out by that single cell. All right, so I wanted to try something before I do the overview for the misconceptions about chapter 29. I haven't done this before, but I want to try it out with this group, and we'll see how it works. If it bombs, we won't do it anymore, but if it does go well, I'm going to try to start doing it a little bit more often, just so that I can connect with you guys a little bit more. And I'm going to use the polling feature in Zoom. So I'm going to launch a poll and you can select correct answers based on the questions. This is not a grade. I just want to get you to participate and think about some of the material. So I have 2 questions here that I'm going to launch. Okay, so it should be visible to you now. It says it's a poll for protists. So I want each of you to read these 2 questions. And I'll go over the answers with you at the end after I get all of the responses. So I'm going to give you probably like 2 minutes. And each of these you can select more than one correct answer. So there's more than one correct answer in each of these. But so I know you're all viewing it right now, and I'll get to see when you guys start voting. So if each of you could just select, actually, sorry, there's 3 questions. One of them is very simple. Okay, I'm going to give it another 15 seconds and then I'll review with you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll in 5, 4. Yeah, and if you haven't had a chance to answer everything, that is okay. This is just a kind of poll. So you should all still be able to see this sorry, you shouldn't be able to. Now you should be able to see the poll results. And I was going to kind of review some of these answers. And so for your protists, and if you haven't started watching the lectures, these are pre-questions. So things that just to see what is already in your base knowledge. So for your protist lineages, 71% of you chose the top one. That is correct. One of the foundational features in your protists is that they have organelles, and the way they acquired those organelles is via endosymbiosis. So the second one is not true of all your protists. So, so there is definitely primary endosymbiosis for all of your protists, but some of them have organelles from secondary endosymbiosis, but not all. So that was not a correct choice. The third option, mitochondria, which 65% of you chose as well, that is correct. Your protists do have mitochondria, and that is found in all of the representatives. And the other 2, plasmids and flagella, those are present in some protists, but not all. So the 2 correct options were the first one, organelles arose by endosymbiosis, and mitochondria, where I forgot the A at the end. So, so it does look like the majority of you did choose those 2. And you'll see in the video lectures that the other options are true of some, but not all protists. All right, so the second one is regarding statements that support endosymbiotic origin of mitochondria. And so the correct answers, and 82% of you chose this middle one. Each mitochondria has a single circular Actually doesn't, I forgot the end of it. It does have a single circular DNA molecule. This is correct. That does support the origin of mitochondria via the endosymbiosis, so that is correct. And then the other one that was chosen by 47% is also correct, is that mitochondria contain prokaryotic type ribosomes. So those did get the highest percentage of votes, and those are correct. And what I want you, part of why I'm asking these questions, is that I'm trying to highlight for you things that I want you to pay attention to while you're watching the video lectures and reading the textbook. These are, I want you to understand endosymbiosis, and I want you to understand the derived characteristics of your protists. All right, and then this last one is also a common misconception when we think about protists. Ones that we're commonly focusing on in the videos that I showed you a little earlier were ones of unicellular representatives. So I showed you a diatom, a paramecium, and a dinoflagellate. Those are all unicellular, but not all protists are unicellular. We also have multicellular representatives like your algae, like some of your seaweeds. And if you're in lab, you'll see some of those representatives, and some of them get enormous. Some of them are the fastest growing organisms that exist on Earth. All right, so, okay, so great job. Thank you for participating. I think that worked better than I had anticipated. Very, very happy. All right, so the next chapter that I just want to highlight a couple of things for is chapter 29, which is the introduction to your land plants. And this chapter introduces the most simple representatives of your plants. One of the things that I want you to take home regarding your plants, and I tried to emphasize this in the video lectures, are the characteristics that are unique to the land plants. So these are the derived characters. We learned that term earlier. Now we're applying it. So what do these organisms have that the green algae, which is has a shared common ancestor, what do the land plants have that the green algae don't, right? Those derived characters set them apart from the green algae. And then once you look at your land plants, you'll notice that you have your non-vascular plants and your vascular plants. There are certain derived characteristics that your vascular plants have and that your seed plants have that your non-vascular plants do not have. Those are the things that I'm trying to emphasize. Those lead to our ability to group those organisms and talk about their phylogeny. All right. The other point that I want to make, and which I tried to allude to with your those practice sheets that I've posted, is that alternation of generations, which is the life cycle we see in your plants. You also see it in some of your protists, your multicellular green algae, your multicellular brown algae, but which we are not getting into. But this life cycle is called alternation of generations, and it is challenging for people to understand. So I recommend focusing on that and studying it using the different techniques that I shared. With this, one of the things that we talk about is the haploid and diploid stages. So humans, and I use this as the example frequently, humans, our main bodies are diploid, so we have 2 sets of chromosomes in each of our cells. We do produce haploid cells, and those are our gametes. Our gametes are produced via meiosis, and our gametes are haploid. However, our gametes are unicellular. With your plants, they have a haploid form, but their haploid form is multicellular, which is part of the mind-boggling part. So imagine your haploid form, right, actually walking around and living in a multicellular form. It's hard to imagine, but that is what is occurring, okay? So just make sure that you focus on that as well. All right, and so one of the other confusing parts is what I just mentioned. Animals produce gametes via meiosis. Okay, so we produce a haploid stage related to sexual reproduction via meiosis. In plants, meiosis still occurs, but the result of meiosis produces an asexual spore, right? So that meiosis is not always tied to sexual reproduction in all organisms. It differs in animals and plants. And I know that's confusing, and I wanted to point that out so that you don't have a preconception about that. All right, so since that poll worked so well, I'm gonna do another poll for the plants. We'll see how this goes. And these are all true, false. So even if you don't know the answer, just guess. And we'll make sure that we've reviewed this, but these are things that are trying to identify your misconceptions so that you can be aware of it as you move forward.
I have a question.
Yes.
So just making sure, I don't know if you already mentioned this, but the questions that you're posting here, are you going to post it on Blackboard as well in case if we wanted to go back and see?
I absolutely can. Yeah, I hadn't considered it. I definitely will be posting the video later, so you'll get to see the video. But yeah, I can absolutely. That's a great question, and it is not difficult for me to add these. So yeah, I'll create a little document and I'll add it to our folder for today.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just making a note so I remember to do it. All right, I'm going to give it another 15, 20 seconds. All right, 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right. Okay, so now you should be able to see the results. Okay, so the first one, plants are defined as multicellular, eukaryotic, photosynthetic autotrophs. Yes, so this is, I have this marked as false. Define as, yes, they are multicellular. Eukaryotic, they're eukaryotic, photosynthetic. I'm going to come back to this. I don't know why I wrote false. I have to think about that for a minute. Okay. All right. Plants produce 2 types of reproductive cells, spores and gametes. Yes, this is true. All right. Next, meiosis results in the formation of egg and sperm cells. So that is false. That's one that I kind of led you into. And this is why I'm encouraging you to look at alternation of generations. When you're looking at your plants, meiosis is actually going to result in the formation of spores. Okay, the next one is plant sporophytes. These are all alternation of generations questions. Plant sporophytes grow from haploid spores. Okay, this is actually false. Your sporophytes produce spores, and those spores grow into gametophytes. Okay, and so the term is usually that sporophyte or gametophyte. It's usually what they produce, not what they grow from. Okay, and then the next one is the plant gametophytes are haploid multicellular bodies, and for that, that is true. Your gametophytes, which produce gametes, are haploid, and they produce, and they are multicellular. So there's a multicellular haploid and a multicellular diploid stage. And I am gonna look this up when I get off Zoom and fix it, because I am confused why I wrote false when that actually looks correct. Correct. Photosynthetic autotrophs. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'll put this up for you guys, you folks, after we're done recording. Are there other questions? No other questions. Okay. All right, then you are free to go for today. And if you have any other questions, Zoom or email me, and we will take care of whatever your questions are. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank
I had
you.
to-
Thank you.
Question?
Yes.
Yes.